don't grieve a transition in life. We don't grieve when a dream dies. We don't necessarily always grieve when a relationship dies.
Welcome to the After Chapter podcast. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Cecilia. We explore who you are when the roles fall away.
And pour into what's next, one conversation at a time.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the After Chapter podcast. I'm really excited to have this conversation. Hey, Michelle, how's it going?
Hi, girl. I'm good.
You're
I'm
good?
good.
Good.
Yeah,
Excited?
I'm excited. I think it'll be a really good episode today.
Yeah, this is one of the as I thought about the different topics that we plan to cover this season. This is the one that I think is going to be really meaty. And so super excited. We have a guest who you all will get to meet in just a second. But as is the tradition, before we go deep, we must pour. And I'm giving a side eye to the pour. So Michelle, please tell me what's going on in my glass.
Yeah, so today's pour is a little bit different because the episode's a little bit different. So it's not a cocktail, it's not wine, and there's no caffeine. So we have in our glass still mineral water. No ice, no garnish. And we're drinking still mineral water because it matches the conversation that we're going to have today. It is about when the calendar is empty, nothing is required of you. There's nothing to distract or propel you forward. And so this is what remains.
That is incredibly deep and profound but also a little peaceful, right? So I'm looking at the glass. It's very soothing. You know, there are a lot of analogies, glass half full, glass half empty. And so here's a glass that's full, but filled with what, right? And so what I appreciate about this is the connection that we're going to talk about, the agenda, the Monday morning dilemma. So that life shift, the kids left, you dropped the kids off at college over the weekend, and now you're waking up on Monday. You don't have to drive anyone anywhere or pick anyone up from anywhere. I have a colleague who is retiring, and she said she's very concerned about that Monday when she wakes up and doesn't owe anybody anything. There are no meetings on her calendar. And so like your empty calendar, this glass of water is asking you just to sit with it.
So it's really about facing the moment and facing it really honestly. There's no, as you said, no deadlines, no expectations. No one is quote unquote looking for you. And no one is really watching. So who are you when there's nothing to perform?
That is deep. And with that, I'm going to take a sip. And I'm just going to take a sip of my mineral water.
Yes.
Yes. Yum.
Yes. Take that pause.
No, it's actually cleansing. It's cleansing. I like that. So as I said, I really sincerely have been looking forward to this conversation. Well, as we talked about in our first episode, so many times we are so wrapped up in our title, parent, spouse, executive, coach, whatever your title is. And when you've made that shift and that title is no longer who you are in this moment, there's the weight. That title is not claimed. But what I think is a distinction is the difference between having time, having a full agenda, and knowing how to live inside of this moment. What would you say?
And for many, this is a moment that really sneaks up on. Yeah. There's that chapter where the calendar really does go quiet. It's a clear calendar. And when I think about it, this clear calendar, it's so counterculture because we always stay busy. Even when you get asked the question, hey, how are you? The response is, oh my God, I'm so busy. And you wear it like a medal. Like you're prideful of saying, I'm so busy. And it's an honor. And busyness is often, identity wearing a disguise.
Mhm.
So how do we normalize that unease where you don't respond with, I'm so busy? And for some, the emptier the schedule, it can bring less peace.
Mm, I agree 100%. I've had those moments myself. And so I'm really pleased to have a colleague, a peer, a friend join us in this conversation. So we've invited executive leadership coach Felicia Scott to share how she advises her clients to shift perspective and to prepare for this moment, and how she herself has had to deal with the shifts and moments and busyness. And so, before I bring her in, I do want to just say one question that remains. And we asked in the first episode, who are you without your title? And so the question is, how, as Michelle just talked about, what hides in the busyness. And so the busyness can protect us from deeper questions. So am I still valuable? What if I'm not needed? So with that, Felicia, I'd love for you to join us and tell us a little bit, not your resume, but a little bit about your experience in the empty calendar with the shift.
Well, hello everyone to begin with, and thank you so much for having me here. I've had the empty calendar many times in life. I've had the empty calendar graduating college, and you think when you graduate college, you just envision the job's going to be right there, and then the job wasn't right there. So for me, it was like a year and a half where I had to figure things out. Had the empty calendar, even in terms of business, owning your own business. Sometimes there can be really quiet seasons and quiet times, and during those moments, having to figure it out. And I found myself reflecting once I had the theme. You talked about the theme and what today's about, and I don't know why, but what came back to me was a moment I had. It was I think it was like my second or third year of college. I dealt with depression in college. I actually dealt with depression from the ages of 17 till about 23, 24 years old. And I remember there was this one particular moment where I didn't have the name for it. I didn't know I was depressed. I just thought, you're mean. You're mad all the time. You're angry. You're this, you're that. And I had a lot of negative feelings, and I was defining myself by the emotions I was having. And I remember one day I just had this moment where I sat on the edge of my bed. I had been alone in my room. My roommate was out of town. I'd been alone in my room for about an entire week. Nobody even knew I was back at the dorm. And I sat on my bed, and it just hit me. And it was like, you're depressed. And I was so relieved to have a name for what I was feeling, because I realized what I was feeling this moment in my life was not who I was. And that's something that I've carried with me, I think, ever since. And so I've been blessed enough to be able to kind of um, not completely avoid the trap of defining by the roles I play in life. But in order for me to survive the depression early on, I had to figure out that I wasn't what I was feeling. I wasn't my failing grades in college, because I was depressed. I wasn't doing as well as I could have done. And so I had to learn early not to define myself by those external things. Um, and so that's something I've carried with me throughout my adulthood. And it's not like I don't land it perfectly. I don't get a 10 on it all the time, but I'm consistently reminding myself of that.
Wait, can I ask Felicia, how did you provide that name to say I'm depressed, or were you diagnosed? Did you by a doctor to say you are depressed? How did you know you were depressed? Was that your definition, or did you have to go somewhere to be
And I would say
defined in
that was
a
my
sense?
definition. But I mean, y- you
Okay.
know, staying in a room with no contact with other people, the waking up, and just it was darkness all the time. Just I
Mm.
the heaviness in my body every single day to just get up and to do the bare minimum, to not want to do things I previously wanted to do. Um, I was definitely depressed, and unfortunately, at that time in my life, had some stereotypes about seeking therapy, and so it was something that I didn't do until I was about maybe in my 30s. And it's not because I was experiencing depression at that moment, but because I realized at that point, like, if your car needs a fixing, you go to a mechanic. If this needs being done, you go here. And so for me, then the stereotypes around therapy were debunked. And I realized, okay, you need to be having conversations with someone to help you continue to move forward and be productive and deal with some of the emotions that you're being challenged with.
You know, that's a really good acknowledgement. And I think for those of our listeners who have been at a point in their life where there's been a shift, where there's been a major change, the thing that took up most of your time is gone. And now you're trying to figure out who you are within this space. Um, the fact that you can name the feeling of heaviness, and something that I think is we touched upon a little bit, and we'll touch upon it, I think, in every episode, is acknowledging the moment of loss.
Absolutely.
So I think for you, if I were to go back to and talk to you, the college student, you were
Yeah.
focused on graduating, right? And that could be applied to anything. Focus on graduating, focus on getting the kids out the house, focus on my career, and that is done. But there's nothing next.
You said something very key, and it's grieving. We don't grieve a lot of our losses. We grieve when we lose someone because it's like, okay, that's acceptable grieving. But we don't grieve a transition in life. We don't grieve when a dream dies. We don't necessarily always grieve when a relationship dies. And I think that's a really big thing. Like, grieving the loss, I think, would be key to any transition you have to make. It's okay to be sad about it. It's okay to cry about it. And especially if you grieve it and you name it. Once you name it, it's kind of like, to me, naming something puts it in a container, and it makes it portable. It makes it, you can manage it, you can carry it because you defined it. Until you've defined it and you've named it, it can almost be this overwhelming sense of being completely out of control. But just being able to name something, I think there's a sense of calm that comes. And even in terms of like how our brains work, the act of naming something does add a sense of control. It does add a sense of direction, um, and it takes away the feeling of being overwhelmed just to name it. Now, we may have to work through whatever we've named, but it's not this boogeyman that's out there, and we just can't get on top of it.
Yeah. I want to double click on that again, because that's so, when you just said that, Felicia, that I felt that in the sense of, I'm double clicking on we, society, whomever, your family. It's okay if you grieve, as you said, the loss of someone, someone, it's physical. But when it's something else, as you said, loss of a dream, loss of a job, yes, it's sad, and it's acceptable that, yes, it's a sad moment. It's a loss, but I don't think we really surround our, people going through that in that same way. It's not the same, whereby you're given that grace, you're given that time to truly grieve the loss of this thing, this dream that you had that is no longer, this job that you had that is no longer. It's kind of like, okay, it's sad, but after a week, okay, we move on, fix it,
Yeah.
fix it. But yes, you're trying to fix it, but you also need to sit in this grief.
I think there's when we have thoughts or when we have emotions, I think it is key again, as you said, that we sit, we not don't run from it. Sometimes you want to run, you want to, and the busyness is a an acceptable way, an approved way of running, is keeping ourselves moving. But yes, when you've lost something, when things are changing, when you feel out of control, when you are not where you thought you'd be in life, we have to sit with that moment. And it's also, we have to ask ourselves, what is the meaning I'm giving this moment? What is the meaning I'm giving this thought? What is the meaning we're attributing to any situation? Because sometimes we don't realize the meaning that we are ascribing to something. And if we could just connect with what we're, the definition we're putting on something, or what we think it's telling us, that helps us begin to heal. And in my perspective.
No, I like that. And, something that we've said here, we're not experts, right? So these are uh, thought starters, things for people to think about, things for people to as they examine their own stage of life. And, our hope is that as people are participating in the conversation, that they hear something that resonates with them, but also that allows them to identify whether it's a phase that they have been through that they didn't name, that they just pushed through, or a phase that they're currently in, or helps them to think about a phase that is coming. Right. And so the after chapter, right? It's the next. And so I do believe there is power in naming. And once you name it, then it gives you the control to make the decision of what to do with it. And so would love to, as Michelle said, double click on, once you've named it, what are some tactics that you've used? You said you've had many junctures in your life where you've gotten to that empty phase. You go through the exercise and you name it. Then what?
After I name it, I ask myself, what does this mean? And I think one thing I'm getting better at is, when I tell myself what it means, I also ask myself, is that really true? Is that, is that the reality of the thing? Is that really true? Sometimes we think, maybe, for instance, I'm just going to use an example. I have a niece who is she's 14, and all the other kids are taller. They're growing, much taller than she is. And, she's working through this thing. And what I keep asking her is, well, like, what does it mean to be tall? Like, what do she's describing a lot of things to it. It's height, but she's describing maturity. She's describing, being liked, just a lot of different things. And then I'm, stop and sit with what it means. So for me, once I figure out okay, this is what's happening. This is the meaning you're ascribing. Is it true? And then I'm also, for me, I look at worst case scenarios. Well, what's the worst thing that could happen here? And what I do know, and I deeply believe about myself, is that I am resilient. I am absolutely resilient. There is just not a situation that can beat me. You can stop me temporarily. You may have me by the side of the road crying for a little bit, but there's not a situation that can beat me, um because I'm determined to win. And then they're just, I've learned to define what really matters to me, is the key thing. What really matters, and what really matters to me is love. What really matters to me is having a sense of a purpose. What really matters to me is making a difference. And so, I think connecting with our values is a key thing that can be helpful to anyone. Um, our values can be they're our North Star. And I think a lot of times we can live out of alignment with our values even, and we don't even realize it. And so it's kind of like I'm walking around in somebody else's clothes. I'm pretending all day. And so really connecting to my values and making values aligned decisions and choices is another thing that I think is very helpful.
Felicia, do you think that being busy keeps us from having this conversation with ourselves. So, do you believe that this is how our brain works, in the sense of when we are really busy, whether we're busy just for the sake of being busy, and not taking time to really then think about those questions of, am I happy? And should I be doing this?
To
X and whatever other
to
questions
be
come up.
honest, busyness is actually counterintuitive to how our brains work. Our brains like simplicity. Our brains like focus. Our brains, naturally want as little to deal with as possible. Research shows that, like, literally tens of thousands of thoughts go through our mind like every minute, but we're not aware of it. We just focus on some key things. And so I think busyness is actually counterintuitive to how we are designed and how our brains want to work. Our brains want to simplify things. And one key thing I think that I heard it like earlier, last part of the year, someone said this, and I read it in a book as well to confirm it, but our brains don't care about our success. Our brains don't care about our happiness. Our brains care about us being safe. And that, for me, that kind of, made me step back and look at things. Um, Again, our brains are not saying, hey, be happy, be successful, it's be safe, be safe, be safe. So again, I think all the busyness is not what our brains really want. I think we want the focus, we want the clarity, we want as few things as possible. But I think we also, don't want to sit with our emotions. I read something that blew my mind. Research shows that emotional pain has the same impact on our body as physical pain. And so there was a study they did that people who were in emotional pain, they gave them Tylenol and they felt better because our body responds to emotional pain as we do physical pain.
Uh, yeah, that is right. So I know, I'm just thinking, so why, if our brain wants to feel safe, our brain wants simplicity, where does the
Hustle gene?
yeah, where does that come in? Why do we make it hard? Why do we fill our calendar, this calendar with so many things that make it so much harder?
Let's not, underestimate the role of social pressure, right? That's you must be, when somebody's got a busy calendar, I can hardly keep up with you. I can never get you on the phone. Or you must be doing so much a lot. There's a kind of like even a social pressure to, the busier you appear, the more quote unquote supposedly productive you are. And so I think there's a huge social pressure to be busy. And I also think, yes, even though our brains want to simplify things, I think we also sometimes don't want to sit with the rawness of the emotion that will come with the silence, that will come with the not having things on our calendar, and the doubts that will then surface because there is a message we're being fed. So I'm being fed the message that success is XYZ. Wait a minute, I'm not. I'm at ABC, not XYZ. So what does this mean about me? And so I kind of want to run from that. And so let me find the things to keep me busy.
So you find the things to keep you busy, and you've been moving through life, keeping the busy, following the hustle culture, and here you are, whether by choice or by force. You no longer have those things that defined you, those things that kept you busy. Maybe you've named it, or maybe you're figuring it out. How do you now, or how do you advise people, or how have you learned to remove the instinct to fill the space with something? What's advice for people who, as I said, are going through this or might be going through this? And if they were to walk away from this conversation, okay, so this thing I'm feeling, it's okay for me to feel that way. I need to sit with it for a while. And now what?
There's a scripture that I think of often, quite often, and it says, "Teach me to number my days." we are not all here for an infinite amount of time. There's an expiration date on all of us. And when I think about numbering my days, is I want to live with purpose, and I want to live with impact. And so when I get to that point, it is also kind of backing up and thinking, what do I what do I want to leave? What is the legacy? How do I want to touch people? And then for me, it literally is about constructing my days around ensuring that I'm more in alignment with that, having that impact. And again, that's that values alignment piece.
Can I go back though, in terms of when that calendar is empty and that structure really does disappear? What's our brain doing? Is there research, or just listening to what you shared just now about the research, that our brain wants something simple? I would think our brain would be happy when that structure disappears. And so is it really, we're feeling it, as you said, the emotional pain of it because of society?
I think there's a difference between structure and busyness. You can have structure and move at a steady, leisurely pace. And I think it's important for us to provide ourselves with that structure. But what's going to determine that structure now is what it's about. So what I'm saying is, what determines the structure now for me is, again, how I want to show up, the legacy I want to leave, who and how I want to help. And I also, everything doesn't have to be deep. I believe in simple, pure moments of joy too. For me, nothing like a cup of hot tea and a good movie, or a hot shower, getting in my bed with a cup of hot tea. And so for me, I've learned to, um, the simple pleasures in life matter as well. I think it's about making every day count and enjoying life, because we're not here for an infinite amount of time. And so making each day count is really what provides structure at that point. And again, that's not the same thing as being busy.
Right, right. It's funny. I am so guilty, and my husband gets very upset with me. And I'm trying to unlearn that I don't have to earn my rest. And whenever there's and I'm guilty of that, and I don't think I want a cookie, but I'm guilty of the busy, right? So just doing a lot, so much that I busy myself to the point of I'm exhausted, and then I'm forced to rest. And then even in that rest, I feel like I have to justify it. Like, oh, I'm going to do this. Like, I feel like I just can't sit on the couch. Like, I should be doing something productive. And so what are some tips, and we can have this as a conversation, right? What are some tips that we can give people to begin to retrain themselves with the instinct to fill the space, to fill the empty?
Can I interrupt as to not even tips, because again, we're not we're not even experts. I believe we are not here to fix. Meaning, when I say we, I don't mean even Cecilia and I, or this podcast. I'm just saying the general we. I believe it's more of a, how do we tolerate the quiet? How do we just sit in that, where it's not, let me fix, like nothing. When I hear the word fix, that means something's wrong.
Okay.
And I don't believe anything is wrong.
I think
so. Maybe it's not fix, it's shift. It's shift how we defined it and shift how we feel about it. So, right, it's not fixing. Thank you for that. It's shifting. And so I think if I tied my worth to the busy, and I no longer have that sort of busy, what is my worth now tied to?
I think, that becomes a process. And for me, I'll tell you where I've landed. Um, I'm worthy because I am. That's it. That's it for me. Like, I can't. the fact that I am here, I'm worthy. Um, and life is not, it's not all about me, but my great grandmother used to say, nobody's better than you. You're not better than anybody, but nobody's better than you. And so the same way I want to take care of people, the same way I love to invest in people, the same way I love to encourage people, I have to do that for myself first. Is how I view it. And so I don't feel guilt about what they call rot days. In fact, they say have at least one rot day a week. I don't feel guilt about a rot day. I
Mhm.
don't feel guilt about binging Bridgerton or something else.
I have lots of rut days. And I love it.
Because
I love
some
it.
of these are ways that I'm restoring my soul. And I'm restoring my soul, not just to sit there with a restored soul, but because I believe in the power of community and I'm part of something greater than myself. And so part of the way that I can show up for others in my life is I got to show up for me first.
I mean, you are giving me a lot of pause, a lot of things to consider and think about. And so giving myself my own homework to think about and do, even in this chapter that I am in, I think that's so important. And so I guess, would love to pivot as we talk about the empty agenda and naming the feeling. And it sounds like there's some steps here. So the empty agenda, we're naming the feeling. The thing that I heard you say that I do want to draw upon is the knowing my values. And sometimes I think that we spend so much time chasing something, right? And that something could be getting my kids off to the perfect
Mhm.
college, getting my title in my career and ascending, or getting to, a milestone in my relationship. And when that moves, at the end of it, I may need to do some uh, introspection into who I even am, because you're talking about your values. Does everyone even know what their true values are if they spent so much time busy and chasing and doing versus just being?
Again, for me, I think our values, if we listen, we'll know them. Um, that's what I really believe. I think when you look at what triggers you, what do you think needs your support, your help? These are all things that I believe help us learn more about what we're valuing, what really matters to us. I know I value peace. It is intuitive to me. If you mess with my peace, you will be gone very soon. I don't mess with that. I value freedom, and so I think a lot of us, I don't, it's there and it's present. I don't think it's something you have to go out and you're looking for it outside of yourself. Again, it'll emerge as you sit yourself. There's I have an acronym for the word healing that I use. Um, H is help while you're hurting. E is enjoy life's process. A is accept and anticipate change. L is let go. I is important. It's itemize your issues and your images. Like you got to know in your life, like what are your issues and what are your images? Where am I projecting in life? Where am I trying to be something that I'm not? And then there's guard your heart, out of it flow the issues of life. Because what's an issue for me may not be an issue for either one of you, but like knowing what your issues are. The N is navigate your needs. We can be so tone deaf to our own needs, but they're there and they're driving you. And I want to navigate my needs. I feel that if you don't uh, master your needs will master you. I call it like, don't eat the fruitcake. I absolutely don't like fruitcake. And I remember at one point, I really don't like fruitcake. And I got
I don't either.
I
I
do.
got a
Don't either.
fruitcake.
I'm there with you.
I got a fruitcake for Christmas one year, and put it in the back of the fridge. And I didn't do grocery shopping for a while, and I got really hungry. And there I was in the fridge, and I was contemplating that fruitcake. And so people have to realize what is your fruitcake? What is it? What is it a metaphor for? And then G is grow with gratitude. I there's a power in being grateful. When we complain, we we rewire our brain, and then when we choose gratitude, we are rewiring our brain for gratitude, and we are rewiring our brain to be open and to be hopeful as well.
Is is what you're saying, in terms of sitting with yourself, part of that emotional IQ to understand really who you are, as you've given some examples for yourself,
Yes.
to understand um, all those parts of, the words of your
Hmm.
acronym, to sit with that and really get to understand
Hmm.
yourself emotionally so that you can, to go back to the beginning, name
I'll tell
it.
you, I, I'm nosy, and so I'm not comfortable with I don't know, especially when the I don't know is about me, right? Like I don't know why I'm at this. I am. You are with yourself 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I mean, you cannot get away from yourself, right? And I think that's busyness. That's a way people try to get away from themselves, and indulging in other things is the way they try to get away from themselves. But you're with yourself 24/7, and so I'm not comfortable with I don't know when it comes to me. I need to know. I'm nosy. I need to know why I'm angry. I need to know, you know, why couldn't I celebrate when Cece won that thing? Why couldn't I celebrate? I need to know why, because I have that constant curiosity about myself, because I want, I think it's driven by my value for peace. I want to be at peace with myself. And so that's the sitting for me.
Mm. Sounds like there's a lot of introspection that must happen at this empty point, right? So we get to that juncture, and it's not to rush past
Right.
the empty agenda or rush past the feelings that I'm feeling that I might not have named. So getting to that point, sitting with it, trying to figure out what it is that I'm feeling, and then navigating it um, as we move forward. Because what I appreciate about this conversation is we do want to give our listeners something to think about, something to reflect on their own journey, where they've been or where they are or where they're headed, and to have them reframe the concept of the Monday morning emptiness, not
Yeah.
not sit with it with fear or view it with fear.
Yeah.
I think I don't believe in unemployment. And what I mean by that is I think there is something that we all can do, and find what brings you joy, find what triggers you, because that matters to you. Is tapping on your value somehow. And so I don't believe in unemployment in the sense of we all matter. Until we're gone, we all matter. And for everyone, it's finding the ways that you matter, and then showing up in those ways. And it doesn't have to be in someone's office. It could be through volunteering. It could be through, you know what? I'm just gonna sit and enjoy myself today. It could be I'm gonna go to a pottery class. And why am I going to the pottery class? Because it's something I've always wanted to do, and it's allowing me to express a part of myself. And I think there's validity in all those things.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been really as rich as we thought it would be. And so what I'm hearing is that empty agenda, it's not the destination. And two, it's not failure. It's an invitation for further exploration. Michelle, what would you say?
Yeah. For me, it's really just sitting, just like the water, the still water. And as you were just speaking, my thoughts went to because there's so many people who they can't sit. They must be busy because they are running from themselves. And so I think about that and how do, how, I mean, for me, it's not so difficult to
Mhm.
sit. but I'm trying to put myself in those shoes and just to sit. And so my thoughts are more around and sitting doesn't need to be like people say around meditation. I can't meditate. My thoughts are all over the place. My thought is more around it's quote unquote sitting, whether that's through a drive and really, as you said, Felicia, getting to understand the why. Why am I feeling like this? Why am I doing this? And questioning yourself as to, am I happy? Whatever your definition of happy is, but truly you as the individual, am I happy? So that's my thought as this episode as our conversation is ending and is winding down.
You know, it makes me think of sometimes for some people it is a big challenge to sit with themselves.
Yeah.
And you can eat an elephant one chunk at a time. And so maybe it's not you can't just sit with yourself like somebody else can, but you know what? Start with 2 minutes. Start with 2 minutes of sitting with yourself, going on the porch or just turning out the lights and just playing a song that you really love. Nothing else going on. That can be, an introduction, 3 minutes of sitting with yourself. Because you love the song and it touches you because it resonates with you, resonates with your spirit. Why? And just sitting with that. There are small ways that we can, get to that point. We don't all have to, you don't start there. Like I remember, if it was a question I was talking about just like last week, I remember the first time I took myself out to eat alone. All right. I was, in my 20s, mid-20s. All my friends were in great relationships. I wasn't. I was by myself. And I said, you know what? I took myself to a movie and I took myself to a really nice restaurant. And now, like, that's one thing I absolutely love is eating by myself. But it started with that first awkward Italian restaurant, eating by myself, feeling, people looking at me. Nobody's even thinking about me. They're feeling like they're looking at me and all these different things. And then, and just over and over again, I did it to, now I do it often and I love it. But it started with discomfort and I had to deal with that discomfort.
One bite at a time.
One bite at a time.
So before we close today, we like to close our episodes where we have been exploring and we're continuing to explore identity. And can be a very slippery slope, especially when you do not have a title, whether that's professionally or personally. And so we like to end the show asking people to describe themselves. If you were to introduce yourself to someone in 3 words where you are not using your title, as mentioned, professionally or personally, so you're not a caregiver, that's where your family title is or your professional title, what would you say to introduce yourself in 3 words?
Resilient, funny, and encouraging. I'm an encourager.
I like that. Yes, you are. All of those things. Felicia, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. Very reflective. And I know that you've given us a lot to think about as we step away. And I'm hoping that our listeners will sit with this as well and explore, as I said, regardless of where they are, what chapter they happen to be in. I do believe there's something that they will take away from this moment. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for spending time with us on the After Chapter podcast.
Like, follow, subscribe, and share. Until next time, pause, take a sip, and stay with what's unfolding.